Imagine that your hobby involving martial arts, combined with your talent, allows you to change your life. After seeing someone in danger and helping them, a parole officer offers you a job, and now, you will do everything you can to protect society from those who have recently been released from prison. The story begins with our protagonist showing us that he excels at everything he enjoys, and besides always winning, Jong-do only seeks to do things that bring him fun. The man doesn't just spend time on himself, he has a loyal group of friends and also helps with deliveries at his father's restaurant. However, one day, while returning to his game night, Jong-do passed by a dark street where two men were engaged in a physical fight. Since it involved an officer, the protagonist just watched until he realized that the ex-convict had grabbed a glass bottle from the ground and injured the officer. At that moment, Jong-do intervened, and using the moves he knew, he subdued the ex-convict. In the next scene, we see the protagonist being thanked by the officers, and after being introduced to the electronic monitoring manager, Mr. Seon-min offered Jong-do a job. Basically, what they do is monitor ex-convicts who have been released and are in the ankle bracelet phase. For each police officer, there is a martial arts agent who helps control the situation if it becomes chaotic, because every time the convict doesn't answer a call or follow the protocol, a pair goes to the location to talk to him. The conversation Seon-min started was to ask a favor from Jong-do. The man explained that with Mr. Cho injured, the agent the protagonist helped the previous night, the workload would be too heavy for the others in the department. But if Jong-do agreed to cover for Mr. Cho for a few days, Seon-min would be very grateful, especially since the protagonist has extensive knowledge of martial arts. Since it was quite an offer, Jong-do took some time to think about it. However, after talking with his friends and family, the protagonist decided to take on the challenge. Thus, in the next scene, he is introduced to the team and learns what he will have to do daily. Which is basically sitting in front of a monitor, checking if an ankle bracelet is violating the terms, and going to the location if necessary. After a few hours of blinking in front of the screens, Jong-do receives an alert that Yang-ho's ankle bracelet is running low on battery. After calling the man, who ignored him, the protagonist went to Seon-min to report the situation, and we then see the two heading to the location. Jong-do was equipped with a vest resistant to small stabbings, a camera to record the entire action, and a taser to be used only in emergencies. As soon as they arrived, the protagonist noticed that the only window without bars belonged to Yang-ho. Thus, the two agreed that Seon-min would knock on the door while Jong-do waited outside, as the ex-convict would likely try to flee. As the protagonist predicted, that's exactly what happened. As soon as Seon-min managed to get the door opened, the ex-convict jumped out the window, and in his attempt to escape, he was stopped by Jong-do. Seon-min realized the protagonist was truly skilled, and as a way to reward him for his effort, he offered to buy him dinner. However, Jong-do ended up inviting his friends as well. By the end of the night, despite the age difference between Seon-min and the boys, everyone had a great time. The man even ended up sharing the reason he became a police officer. It turns out that when he was little, he was in a car accident, and the two back doors, where Seon-min was seated, became jammed. Thus, when the engine started to catch fire, Seon-min was injured on part of his body, and after the police rescue arrived, the young boy decided he would pursue that profession. But unfortunately, this story had some consequences for him. For example, one of his legs had its growth affected, which is why he can't act as a martial arts agent. Later, as they were leaving the establishment, Seon-min received a call from his staff informing him that they needed to respond to a call. At the same time, another prisoner violated the terms and needed to be visited. Since Jong-do hadn't been drinking, he decided to take action. However, the protagonist's friends also joined in, and when the pair exited the vehicle upon arrival, they asked the boys to stay safely in the car and wait. While searching for the ex-convict, the system alerted that the man had removed his ankle bracelet. Luckily, Jong-do's friends were nearby, so they could use Yumado's drone to locate the fugitive. Since the protagonist was the fastest runner, he was the first to reach the man. After a physical struggle with him, Jong-do thought everything was fine, but when he let his guard down, Do-woong pulled out a pocket knife and threatened to end his own life. With Se-min's help through the earpiece, the protagonist managed to calm the man down, and in the end, everything turned out okay. The next day, the protagonist visited his aunt to change his look, and there he encountered a rather strange man leaving the place. Well, Jong-do continued with his plans, but on his way home, he spotted the same man in an establishment, touching a waitress's hand in a way that clearly wasn't right. Since the protagonist was already beginning to recognize certain behaviors from those he dealt with at work, he decided to go to the base to see if this man was among those being monitored. Once he confirmed his suspicions, he informed Se-min. The first attempt was for the agents to call the ex-convict, who made it clear that he was about to do something bad. So, they quickly hit the streets to search for him, and without the signal from the ankle bracelet, which had been removed, it became even harder to find him. While searching, Jong-do thought the man might have gone to his aunt's shop after realizing she ran the beauty salon alone earlier. When the protagonist arrived, he found the ex-convict in action. Of course, this enraged Jong-do, and within minutes, the man was knocked out and handcuffed. Having this experience of saving a family member from these predators made Jong-do decide to fully commit to this career instead of treating it as just a temporary job. This news made Se-min very happy. Now the two are moving to a different team. They will be monitoring a high-risk ex-convict named Ki-young, who harmed many children before being imprisoned, and society cannot risk him making more victims. When Ki-young was released and on his way to his new residence, a large, angry crowd was waiting for him, as people believed the ex-convict should have received a harsher sentence. And at night, when everyone had calmed down, Ki-young received a visit from a man named Byung-soon, who encouraged him to return to his wrongdoings. The next day, we see the protagonist following Ki-young. With Se-min's permission, Jong-do decided to do this to prevent anything from happening. However, since he had to remain undercover, he lost sight of the ex-convict for a few minutes. It was during this time that Ki-young entered a car in the underground parking lot. Inside the vehicle, the man made a deal to record several videos of him harming children. Although the protagonist spotted the car, the tinted windows prevented him from seeing who was inside. But just in case, because he found the vehicle suspicious, Jong-do memorized the license plate. And since they couldn't find Ki-young, Se-min called the ex-convict, who made an excuse and pretended to be at an establishment. The man was quick enough to arrive at the location before the protagonist could check, so there wasn't much the agents could do. The next day, we see that Mr. Cho has recovered and returned to work. He even brought a gift for Jong-do to use in this new phase of his life. In the next scene, we see a little girl walking alone down the street. She was on her way home when she got distracted by a dog tied to a post, and at that moment, a man took advantage and grabbed her. Meanwhile, Byung-soon went to see Yang-ho, who is back on the streets, to recruit him for a scheme. We then move to the next day, where we see Se-min and Mr. Cho going to the place where Yang-ho is accused of being. His curfew was already in effect, and as expected, Yang-ho was not complying. At the same time, the protagonist was undercover, following Ki-young. First, we will focus on the pair that went after Yang-ho. As soon as they arrived, the two heard a girl scream for help, but it was a trap. Several men appeared, ready to take down the agents. Despite fighting hard for their lives, it seems that Mr. Cho didn't survive, and Se-min was severely injured. Now switching to Jong-do, Ki-young had also set a trap for him, with other men waiting for him. But since our protagonist is highly skilled in combat, he managed to take them all down and then proceeded to search for Ki-young. Jong-do went to the building where the man was staying, and luckily, he thought to check the empty apartments on the lower floor. The protagonist quietly approached to listen to what was happening in the apartment, and after hearing a little girl crying, he sprang into action. Using all his strength, Jong-do tore off the bars from one of the windows to break into the place and asked a curious neighbor to call the police. As soon as he got inside, the protagonist was attacked by Ki-young and Byung-soon. Despite being injured and exhausted, Jong-do kept fighting to give the little girl a chance to be saved. Sadly, just before the police arrived, the protagonist was stabbed. Both were rescued, but the men managed to escape. At the hospital, we see the protagonist's father arrive, very worried about his son's condition. Despite having little strength, Jong-do used what he had left to ask about the little girl, who was now safe and receiving all the support she needed. However, at that moment, he also received the news that Se-min was in surgery because his neck had been broken due to the blows he received, and unfortunately, Mr. Cho didn't survive his injuries. This news deeply affected our protagonist. In the following days, Jong-do attended Mr. Cho's funeral, received an award ceremony for being a brave citizen, and just as he was leaving, he was hit with news that brought a glimmer of hope during this dark time in his journey. The girl he saved is named Minju. As a thank you, her aunt came to the ceremony to give the protagonist a gift and a letter written by the girl, expressing her gratitude for everything. But upon learning from her aunt that, despite recovering, Minju no longer wanted to leave the house, Jong-do realized he had to find Ki-young somehow, as it was unacceptable for the victim to live her life as a prisoner. Thus, as soon as he returned to the hospital, since he was still there to complete his treatment, the protagonist arranged with his friends that once he was discharged, they would track down the ex-convict and hand him over to the authorities. Since this would be an unofficial operation, because technically, Jong-do wasn't supposed to exert himself yet and was on leave as an agent, his friends went shopping and got everything they needed, including a better vest than the one the protagonist had previously used. And do you remember that Jong-do had noted the license plate of the car he found suspicious in the parking lot? Well, the protagonist gave the plate number to his friend Yumado to gather some useful information. As soon as he was discharged, they all went together to the apartment of the car's owner. After gaining entry, the man responsible for paying Ki-young to make videos with children was tied up. While the group tried to extract information about the ex-convict's whereabouts, Yumado and another boy searched the man's computer. And things were even more complicated than we thought. The pair found many disturbing videos, which made Jong-do even angrier. After venting some of his frustration on the man, he revealed that Ki-young had indeed managed to send a video, meaning it wasn't just the girl the protagonist saved who had suffered. Since time was of the essence, the group quickly discovered the last place where Ki-young's card had been used, which the man had access to since it was in his name. Now, the search for the ex-convict, who was getting closer to being caught, began. As soon as Ki-young was located, Jong-do asked his friends to go to a safe place and then called out everyone involved in the ex-convict's scheme for a fight. And even though there were many of them against just one person, the protagonist managed to defeat them all and then pursued Ki-young, who started to flee as soon as he realized Jong-do could handle it. The protagonist managed to track down the ex-convict thanks to his friends, who were following him with the drone. Soon, a physical fight between the two began, and for a moment, I even thought Jong-do wouldn't make it. But even Yumado helped by using the drone, which ended up cutting part of the ex-convict's face, and in the end, Ki-young was handcuffed. In the next scene, we see a ceremony held for the boys. They were recognized for their bravery, and even Minju appeared to thank them. As expected, once he fully recovered, Se-min and the protagonist returned to work as the perfect duo to keep ex-convicts in line. What did you think of this movie? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like and share to help me out. See you next time.